Over 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire spanned across the known world, building roads and aqueducts that still stand today. But beyond the towering marble columns, the clamour of the Senate, and the marching legions, there was a quieter, profound wisdom cultivated in the sun-baked, enclosed courtyard gardens of everyday life. In these quiet spaces, where the air hummed with bees and the heavy scents of crushed leaves, the Romans possessed an intricate understanding of the human body. They knew how to coax vitality back into aging bones, how to clear the fog from an older mind, and how to rekindle the inner warmth that time slowly cools. Much of this knowledge wasn't destroyed by falling empires. It was simply left behind, quietly ignored in the modern rush towards sterile convenience and blister packs. Today, we're going to walk through those ancient wrought iron garden gates. We will brush our hands over the sun-warmed leaves and rediscover 15 forgotten herbs the Romans used to restore the vitality of youth. Let us begin with the herb of remembrance, rosemary. The Romans called it the dew of the sea, as it thrived on the rocky, salt-sprayed cliffs of the Mediterranean. If you have ever walked into a room and suddenly felt the frustrating, hollow blankness of forgetting why you are there, this plant is speaking directly to you. Imagine an aging Roman senator, his hair turning silver, pacing his private courtyard at dawn. To keep his mind sharp for a long day of debates, he wouldn't reach for a harsh stimulant. He would run his hands through the rosemary bushes, breathing in the sharp, pine-like fragrance, perhaps weaving a small crown of the fresh sprigs to wear in his hair. They didn't have the science to explain the mechanics of it, but they knew the truth of it. Today, researchers have found that simply smelling the essential oils in crushed rosemary leaves can actually increase blood flow to the brain, gently sweeping away cognitive fog and reawakening the pathways of memory. Closely growing nearby, with its soft silver-green leaves that feel almost like velvet between your fingers, is sage. Its very name, salvia, stems from the Latin word meaning to save or to heal. As the years go by, it is entirely normal to feel a bit disconnected from the sharp, quick-witted version of your younger self. You might feel a step behind the conversation or find your thoughts drifting. The Romans revered sage as the ultimate preserver of wisdom. They believed it could halt the decay of the mind, keeping the elder statesman sharp enough to guide the republic. In the quiet evenings, the earthy, grounding scent of sage would drift from the hearth fires of ancient homes. Beautifully, modern studies are now showing that sage extracts can improve word recall and elevate mood in older adults. It is the plant that quietly holds your memories safe when you feel them slipping like water through your hands. Our third herb brings a different kind of comfort, one for the physical changes we rarely talk about. Mallow. One of the quietest griefs of aging is the slow, internal drying out of the body. You notice it first in the skin, which becomes paper-thin and easily irritated, like an old, well-loved parchment. Then you notice it in the digestion, which becomes sensitive to meals that used to bring only joy. The Romans understood this loss of vital moisture. They used the soft leaves and vibrant flowers of the mallow plant to brew gentle, mucilaginous teas. Mallow acts like a soothing, protective blanket. It cools the internal heat and brings a deep, slippery moisture back to tired tissues, coating a sensitive stomach lining and plumping the fragile layers of the skin from the inside out. Consider the tall, sunflower-like Elecampane. If you find yourself pausing halfway up a flight of stairs, feeling that your lung capacity isn't quite what it used to be, the Romans would have pointed you to this deeply aromatic root. Think of an older Roman grandfather making his slow ascent up the stone steps of the Palatine Hill. His breath might be shallow, but in his tunic he carries a piece of dried Elecampane root. While soldiers chewed it on long marches to stave off exhaustion, it was the elders who cherished it most. They simmered it with honey into a sweet, thick syrup that expanded the chest and cleared the damp, heavy feeling from older lungs, bringing back the deep, restorative breaths of their earlier years. Next, we find the gentle, citrus-scented relief of lemon balm. Do you remember the deep, uninterrupted sleep of your 30s? For many of us, older age brings the tyranny of the midnight awakening. You lie there in the quiet house, listening to the clock tick, your mind racing through worries that seem far too heavy for the dark. The Romans planted lemon balm directly beneath their open windows, so the evening breeze would carry its sweet scent inside as they lay down to rest. They used it to calm a frayed nervous system, lifting the heavy melancholy that often accompanies aging and inviting a deep, unbroken slumber. It doesn't force you into unconsciousness like a heavy modern medication. It simply holds your hand, calms your racing heart, and leads you back to sleep. We are just beginning to unearth these ancient secrets. In a few moments, I am going to share a herb so precious to the Romans that it was fiercely protected, used by the elite to keep their aging eyes as sharp as a hunting falcon. But first, let's look at how they mended a heavy heart. Our sixth plant is borage, identifiable by its brilliant, star-shaped blue flowers that seem to hold the color of the summer sky. Aging isn't just a physical experience, it carries a quiet, accumulating emotional weight. The empty house when the children have grown, the closing of certain chapters, the transition of your life's purpose from doing to simply being, it requires immense bravery. There was an old Roman proverb, I, borage, bring always courage. Roman matrons would steep these blue flowers in wine to lift the spirits of their aging husbands and to banish the sorrow of passing years. Today, we know borage is incredibly rich in compounds that help regulate the hormonal shifts that make our moods feel fragile or unpredictable in our later years. It is botanical bravery. We find our seventh remedy in the feathery, lace-like green leaves of yarrow. As we age, our internal furnace simply doesn't burn quite as hot as it used to. Your hands and feet might feel perpetually cold, even under a thick blanket, a quiet sign of slowing circulation. The Romans called yarrow the warrior's woundwort, famously used on the battlefield. But for the retired legionnaire sitting by his hearth in the winter of his life, it was a circulatory powerhouse. A warm cup of bitter yarrow tea gently dilates the blood vessels. It acts like a bellows to a dying fire, moving warmth from the center of the body out to the cold extremities, waking up numb fingers and bringing color back to tired toes. This brings us to the sweet, anise-scented fennel. The Romans were brilliant, quiet observers of the natural world. They noticed that as snakes grew old and their vision clouded over, they would seek out and rub against fennel plants just before shedding their skin, emerging renewed with clear, bright eyes. Because of this, they used fennel to clear the terrifying cloudiness of aging vision. There is a specific sorrow in watching the faces of your grandchildren blur or struggling to read the evening paper. We now know fennel contains potent antioxidants that reduce the pressure and inflammation in the delicate, tiny blood vessels of the eyes. They couldn't see the antioxidants, but they saw the light return to their elders' eyes. Perhaps you have noticed that it takes much longer to bounce back from a simple winter cold than it used to. A draft that once meant nothing now settles deep into your chest. Thyme, a low-growing, resilient plant that thrives in harsh, rocky soil, was the Roman answer to this creeping vulnerability. They burned bundles of thyme in their homes during the damp winters to purify the air and strengthen the fading immune system of their older family members. The essential oil within the tiny leaves, thymol, is such a powerful natural defender that it remains the primary active ingredient in many modern respiratory treatments today. It is the invisible, fragrant shield of the garden, and here we reach our 10th marvel, the one I mentioned earlier, saffron. The delicate golden threads, harvested entirely by hand from the center of the autumn crocus flower. In Rome, it was a symbol of pure vitality, incredibly expensive and deeply revered. They used it to protect the aging retina, though they wouldn't have known those modern medical terms. They just knew that the patricians and elders who drank saffron-infused water kept their sight sharp enough to read the smallest script, their moods remarkably elevated, and maintained a warm, golden glow in their complexions. It was the absolute luxury of preserving time. Our 11th herb is the evergreen myrtle. In ancient times, this lush, fragrant shrub was sacred to Venus, the goddess of beauty. Aging gracefully doesn't mean trying to erase your years or desperately trying to look 20 again. There is a profound, earned joy in having healthy, radiant skin that reflects the rich map of the life you've lived. In the great marble bathhouses of Rome, elders would infuse myrtle leaves into the steaming waters. The natural astringent properties of the leaves gently tightened loose, aging skin and cleared the blemishes that come with changing hormones, leaving the body feeling incredibly fresh, clean, and revitalized. Then there is rue, a plant of fierce, uncompromising protection. The Roman philosopher Pliny the Elder, who wrote deep into the night by the flickering light of an oil lamp, noted that aging painters and sculptors would consume rue to preserve their failing eyesight and steady their trembling hands. For the modern older adult, rue represents a sudden return of clarity. It was used to sweep away the mental cobwebs, to sharpen a wandering focus, and to protect the mind from the dulling, softening effects of time. It is a powerful, bitter plant, one that commands immense respect, but in small measures it is like a sudden ray of bright sunlight piercing through a heavy, overcast day. For the deep, aching joint relief that modern pills only seem to mask, the Romans turned to our 13th herb, coriander. When you reach a certain age, your joints often become incredibly accurate weather forecasters. You can feel the rain coming in your knees and your shoulders long before the clouds appear. The Romans marched for thousands of miles across empires, and they understood joint wear and tear better than anyone in history. They used coriander seeds, which possess a deeply cooling anti-inflammatory property, to soothe the internal heat of swollen joints. When crushed and applied as a poultice or steeped into a daily tonic, it calmed the grinding fires of arthritis so they could keep moving forward, unburdened by pain. Just before our final herb sits the vibrant, unstoppable green of mint. There are days when the body just feels incredibly heavy, when the gravity of the years seems to pull a little harder on your shoulders, and a quiet lethargy settles over the afternoon. The Romans used mint to reignite the spark of life. They would rub the fresh, bruised leaves on the wooden dining tables before meals to stimulate the fading appetite and sluggish digestive fire of their elderly. It provides a pure, clean, aromatic energy. The sharp scent of a broken sprig of fresh mint doesn't just soothe an aging stomach, it invigorates the tired senses and tells the heavy body that it is time to wake up. Finally, we arrive at our 15th botanical treasure, garlic. The Romans called it the engine of their empire. As the heart beats millions of times over a long lifespan, the vessels can become stiff, the walls narrow, and the rhythm can begin to labor under the weight of time. The ancient Romans fed raw garlic to everyone from marching soldiers to resting grandfathers to keep the blood thin, the heart muscles strong, and the vital pulse of life beating with a steady, rhythmic drum. It is the ultimate guardian of cardiovascular longevity, quietly dissolving the dangerous accumulations of age within our veins. When you look at these 15 remarkable plants, you begin to see a beautiful, comforting truth. The Romans didn't see aging as a disease to be fought or a battle that had to be lost. They saw it as a landscape to be navigated, and the earth, in her infinite wisdom, had provided every single tool they needed for the journey. The aches in your hands, the forgotten words, the restless nights, these are not failures of your body. They are simply signals. They are your body asking for a little extra support, and the plants we have talked about today are the answers to those signals. They are the quiet, steady companions that have been waiting patiently in the soil, year after year, for us to remember them. You don't need a time machine to experience the vitality of the ancient world. You just need a little gentle curiosity, a small patch of soil, or a trip to a good, trusted apothecary. I hope you found a piece of your own story in these ancient leaves today. Take care of yourself. Listen gently to what your body is asking for, and may you find health, comfort, and deep peace in the wisdom of the past.